Thanks everyone for joining us for today's webinar. Today we're looking at keeping active at home, particularly during this COVID-19 time. Your presenter today is Eric Morales and I'm Andrea Salmon. I'm your facilitator. We start all our programs by acknowledging and paying respects to the traditional custodians, past, present and emerging, on whose lands we meet today, wherever we're joining in from. We acknowledge the deep feeling of attachment and the relationship of Aboriginal people to country, and we respect the cultural authority of the elders in each community. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Eric. Some people might know Eric, but others might not. In this picture on your screen, Eric is on the left-hand side of the picture closest to the clock. Eric's been working for MS since 2018 and he's one of the exercise physiologists at our gym based in Lidcombe. Eric has a keen interest in the human body and the nervous system. He's passionate about exercise as a way of assisting people with MS to improve and manage their MS symptoms and their overall health and well-being. He enjoys working out and staying on the move, and actually great for this time, Eric, that you enjoy Netflix. So we'll have to find out what you're currently watching on Netflix. I was very pleased to see there's another series of Schitt's Creek, which I really quite enjoy. So I'm going to click a couple of buttons here and pass over to Eric. I might even turn off my camera now, and I'll give Eric control of the slides. That should come up for you. Beautiful.
Okay.
Thanks,
Yep.
Eric. That's perfect.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Andrea. And yeah, so hey guys. So first of all, I hope everyone's doing well and in good spirits during these challenging times, but also staying active. So thanks again, Andrea, for the lovely intro. But just to add to that, although I've come across a lot of different MS clients who vary in terms of their clinical presentation, the number one thing that all clients seem to have is a level of resilience that for me is really inspiring. So, so for me, that's why I really love my job, and I'm very fortunate to work with some of you guys who are listening in. So yeah, so hopefully you guys get something out of this presentation today. But for today's topic, it's, as Andrew mentioned, it's staying active at home. And so for some, it might just reaffirm what they already know. For others, it might provide a whole bunch of new information. But I hope that regardless of where you're at, you find the presentation beneficial. So there seems to be a lot of interest on the responses when you guys had to register, which is really encouraging and great to see. And so I really tried to tailor the overall theme of those responses into the presentation. So I guess the main themes are things like staying active, staying motivated, example of some home exercises, how to set up a home program and what to include, tips on staying active and healthy, and then some response was simply to gain more information. So I do appreciate the responses. In saying that though, I do want to set the tone and just reiterate that this is more so an information webinar, and so it's probably not the best platform to provide tailored one-on-one advice. In saying that though, we will discuss options on how we can access, or for you, how you guys can access those more tailored approach to your exercise program in the later slides. And you know, based on the responses when registering, I think it would be really beneficial for you guys to access those services, especially for those who have never exercised at home or just need some more specific guidance tailored to their specific circumstances. But just to give a bit of context as to what will be discussed, so exercise clearly forms the bulk of the presentation, but I wanted to talk exercise from a different perspective. And so that's from the perspective of the brain and how the different elements, when combined, ultimately lead to improved brain health and therefore improved overall health. So I'll move over to the next slides. So I think during these times, such as the current COVID situation, the importance of health really hits home with everyone, right? Not just the physical health, but also the mental health as well. And so in a time where literally everything is COVID related, whether it be on social media, on the newspaper, the 6 o'clock news and so on, it can be quite overwhelming, right? So perhaps maybe switching off and coming back to a time that suits you, but not just coming back, but coming back and referring to reliable sources such as government websites and the World Health Organization websites, and maybe steering clear of media outlets that aim to maximize readership or provide a eye-grabbing headline. All right. But I mean, I guess the main thing during these times is to practice self-care now more than ever by maintaining social relationships, making time for hobbies, eating well, and exercising regularly as well. So talking about exercise, let's move on and focus on that a bit more in relation to the brain. So what I often find is that people get very excited and they tend to lose track on the why. And I do believe that if we're able to clearly understand the why, then we're more likely to do whatever it is that you want to achieve. So let's just bring this back to the very start. So in relation to MS, we know that MS is a neurological condition that affects the central nervous system, okay? So I won't go into the whole pathophysiology of the MS and the central nervous system, but what we know is the central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord, okay? So we can agree on two things here. Number one, MS affects the central nervous system. And number two, the central nervous system consists of the brain and spinal cord. So with this knowledge, we can begin to appreciate that brain health is absolutely crucial to managing, number one, our general health, but number two, the actual MS itself. So the four pillars listed here, and I think it's very important to a very important time to bring about this topic, because now more than ever we are finding we have maybe have a hopefully have a bit more spare time at home, and hopefully able to unwind, reset, and maybe find practical ways that we can now integrate these pillars of brain health. So by looking after the brain, we're effectively looking after everything else. So let me explain this a bit more. So I want you to imagine the brain as a king, okay? So absolutely everything goes through the king, right? All information, interaction, and actions must first be consulted with the king. And so this is sort of how the brain works. So with this knowledge, we can then begin to imagine our brain as a supercomputer that is constantly receiving and sending information that allows us to respond to situations, stores information, send messages to our muscles, and so on, okay? So by looking after our brain, we are effectively looking after everything else. And I guess it's sort of like a trickle-down effect. So let's look into this a bit more in depth, and we'll start off with sleep. So, I mean, for the purpose of getting through the whole content and questions, I'll just briefly touch on sleep. So obviously sleep, something we all love, right? Especially with winter approaching, cold nights or cold days like today. But it's something that's often deprived for one reason or another, okay? So sleep is not a luxury, but it's absolutely crucial for us to function and our body to function at an optimal rate, okay? So, you know, we have the general tips of staying active throughout the day, avoiding caffeine or nicotine later in the day, relaxing before bed, whether it be a bath, reading, or whatever you find it best to unwind and relax, as well as making bed for bed. So the suggestion here is that we should leave the bed solely for sleeping and not to watch TV in bed, for example. Okay. Now, I watched a really interesting TED talk on the power of sleep. And so the two key points here were, number one, regularity is king. Okay. So set a schedule of when you will head to bed and when you will wake up. Okay. So consistency is king. Okay. And so number two was that sleep in a cool environment with 18 degrees being optimal. So it will definitely be a lot easier heading into winter, but the key point here is that our body needs to drop its core temperature to initiate and stay asleep. And so I guess the main reason we find it easier to sleep in a cold environment compared to a very hot and humid climate is because of this. So I really recommend, if this is a topic you are keenly interested in, the link below to the TED Talk by Matt Walker is a great starting point. But as well as that, also the MS podcast on sleep as well are definitely great starting points. And if this is something that interests you. So, I mean, of course, during these times, we're having to self-isolate, but with restrictions easing, this has relaxed to a certain extent. But in saying that, what we must remember is that self-isolation doesn't mean social isolation. So, I mean, we live in a world where technology has grown so fast and continues to do so. I mean, sometimes I can't even keep up. I just recently bought myself an Apple Watch, and I think it's great. I mean, I can receive calls, messaging, heart rate, Apple Pay, and it's all from my watch. So I mean, technology is incredible, right? But if we use it to our advantage, it does wonders. So I guess the main thing here is to let's stay connected, whether it be via Skype, Zoom, Facebook, or whatever you use to stay in touch. I know a simple phone call might not seem like much, but I'm sure it will definitely go a long way for a lot of people. So the brain loves to be challenged and stimulated. The brain has over 100 trillion different synapses. That's right, 100 trillion different connections. And it thrives on maintaining these connections and forming new ones, but only if we use those brain connections. And so that's where neuroprotection comes in. So neuroprotection is crucial for the neuroprotective effects that physically, but also mentally challenging tasks bring. Okay, so what I mean by neuroprotection is a relative preservation of our brain cells and communicating pathways against an ongoing insult or attack to the body. So what neuroprotection aims to do is to prevent or at least slow down progression in some cases. So for example, exercise would be considered a neuroprotective factor in reducing the risk of developing dementia. So I'm sure we've all come across a bit of extra spare time over the past few months. And so there's no better opportunity to do some mentally challenging tasks. It doesn't have to take up your whole day. It can be simply brushing your teeth with the other hand, or allocating 30 minutes a day to learn something new of interest to you. And as I mentioned before, technology is a great thing. There's plenty of apps or websites, I'm sure, that will have some sort of brain training games, or I mean, you just look on YouTube. Lots of great things you can find on YouTube. So give it a go. I mean, use this time wisely and get creative about things. But most importantly, just make it fun, enjoyable, and meaningful to you. Okay, great. So let's talk about exercise now. And this is where the EP in me will sort of come out, okay? So exercise is absolutely non-negotiable, full stop. This applies to absolutely everyone. And it does startle me to see statistics of up to 80% of people with MS not exercising at all. And the reason I say this is because exercise is everyone's best friend. Um, but in saying that, also do what's possible for you. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from this whole presentation, it's simply this: keep active and moving, because exercise is medicine. So let's start with the why. Why should I exercise, Eric? Well, we know the functional benefits such as improved bone density, muscular strength, and psychological health, but also the benefit exercise can have in managing MS symptoms such as fatigue and balance. But let's talk about the role of exercise in brain health, because as we established already, the brain is a king, okay? So as I discussed before, exercise is neuroprotective, meaning it maintains and grows neural pathways by releasing two chemicals. That's nerve growth factor and brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which both function to basically stimulate the growth and maintenance of the nerve cells of the brain, okay? So the way I like to look at it is this. So what happens if you don't water the grass? So it doesn't receive the bath of water it needs, right? So if it doesn't receive this bath of water, the grass can't grow. And so this is exactly the same concept with exercise and the brain. Our brain needs that bath of brain food, which, as we established, is the two chemicals, the nerve growth factor and brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So it needs this brain food for the brain cells to grow and maintain. And so we know through exercise, we're able to assist in this process through the release of these two brain chemicals, okay? So we know exercise is an important role in number one, functional benefits, number two, MS symptoms, and number three, brain health. So this is the why of exercise, okay? So if you're already incorporating some form of regular exercise, then great work. Your brain and your body is thanking you. If not, then that's okay. Let's work through this together. Let's find ways we can make this happen. Because as I said, exercise should be a non-negotiable for everyone, okay? So we'll go to our first poll and I'll get Andrea to take the lead with this.
Sure thing, Eric. So our first question is, which of these sentences best describe the human brain? And you can hover your mouse over the poll and click on which answer you would like to vote for. Is the human brain non-essential and insignificant? Is it the command center for the human nervous system? Is it very basic and a simple organ of the human body? Is it only responsible for memory and movement? So click on that and add your vote to the poll. I can see that 58% or 63% of people that are online have voted. So add your vote. I know that sometimes people find they can't vote, but I think the idea is get your mouse right on that circle and click, and you should be able to contribute your vote. And I'll close that off. That's nearly everyone. Anyone else want to quickly add their vote there? I'll close that off and I'll show the results. Eric, you'll be very impressed with this group of people that are online today. 100% of the people that voted said the brain is the command center for the human nervous system. Well done, team.
Beautiful. And I mean, that just reiterates what we just spoke about. But I did try to catch some of you out, but I wasn't able to do that because answer D does look promising. So answer D was command center of the human nervous system, but is only responsible for memory, movement. And what we got to remember that the brain is responsible for those two actions, but it's not its only role. The brain is a king, and so it plays a role in things like emotion, thoughts, interactions with the environment, breathing, swallowing, digestion, heartbeat, everything, all of those things, okay? So that's right. The human brain is a command center for the human nervous system. So great work to everyone. So I won't spend too much time on this slide, but before we go into how much physical activity and exercise we should be doing, I just wanted to reiterate the difference because I do see that there is sometimes a bit of confusion or a bit of overlap, and there is a bit of overlap. Let me just explain. So put simply, physical activity is just that, anything that requires bodily movement. And so I've listed some examples here, but the picture here does well to illustrate physical activity comes in many shapes and sizes. And then when we talk about exercise, exercise put simply is planned, structured and purposeful towards achieving a particular fitness goal, okay? So whether it be strength or aerobic or balance, okay? So exercise branches off from physical activity, but is not the only way we can stay physically active, okay? So just have a think of what is possible for you to do in order for you to stay physically active, okay? But just remember, physical activity equals any activity that requires bodily movement, and exercise equals a planned and structured program. And so this quote here just summarizes the importance of physical activity really well, okay? So by now we should have a clear understanding of the why we should exercise, okay? Now let's talk about the when or how much we should be doing. Now I think it's important to note that we can't bank exercise. So we can't deposit exercise into an account and be confident that those assets will stay there permanently, because they won't. Instead, we've got to see exercise and do it on a frequent basis because it requires attention and consistency. Now, in terms of the frequency, the guidelines are consistent in identifying 150 minutes of moderate physical activity per week and 2 exercise sessions per week. Now, I don't want you to feel discouraged and be like, oh, I'm never going to reach that. There's no point of me starting because I'm not going to reach said guideline. But what we got to remember is that the exercise guidelines are just that, they're a guideline. Now, I'm not saying that if you're currently doing no physical activity at all or very minimal, to then suddenly increase your activity levels to the recommended dose. Let's take a step back. Let's assess your current situation, do what you think is manageable, set a foundation, and then build up from there. But also, let's not make things so complicated and technical, okay? So, I mean, I don't expect you to be tracking every single minute of physical activity and say you did 18 minutes on this day or you did 34.5 minutes the other day. Because if we're doing that, then we're losing or failing to understand the basic principle here. And that's just to stay physically active on most days and have a regular exercise routine on a weekly basis. That's it. Stay physically active on most days and get a regular exercise routine going. But of course, you do have to appreciate and acknowledge that there are barriers to exercise. Okay, and so whether it be mobility, family, motivation, work, or some MS symptoms as well. So we'll talk about some of those common barriers and how we can overcome them in the next few slides. Okay. But just before I move on, I'll just quickly touch on the scale here. So the RP scale is a really easy and effective way of gauging the exercise intensity. So as a basic rule of thumb, if you're able to hold a short conversation, then it's most likely a moderate then the exercise you're partaking in is most likely moderate intensity. Compared to if you're only able to formulate a few words, then it's most likely in the vigorous or above categories, okay? So the RP scale is just a very easy and effective 1 to 10 scale that helps you determine the intensity you're exercising at, okay? So as we've discussed, we talked about the why and when of exercise. But before I continue, I just want to make sure that we do understand that, okay? And so if there are any questions to this point, I'm more than happy, so then that way we can all move forward and we're confident in moving forward, okay? So, Andrea, I'm more than happy to take questions, or if I can also move on if as you see fit in regards to that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Eric. No one's popped any questions in so far, so I think you're probably okay to keep going.
Beautiful, great.
Cool.
So, I guess a common question that popped up in the responses was, what exercises should I be doing? What are the best exercises for me? And although I'd love to give you a direct answer, the short answer is that it depends. It depends on your goals, it depends on your main concerns. It depends on how you present clinically. And as all of you guys would know, MS is a condition that varies in terms of symptoms and presentation. So because of this, I'd be doing you no justice in giving you a straight answer on which exercise to do if I have no knowledge on any of those contributing factors, okay? But what I do know and what I can tell you and what may assist you in your home program is that any program, not just your home program, should have an element of strength, aerobic, balance, and mobility, okay? Now, exactly what this looks like, again, once depends. But the simple fact is an exercise for you might not be applicable for someone else. But what is applicable for everyone is having a component of those exercise categories. Now, bear with me, I'll try provide an example of exactly what I mean in the next slide, okay? So, although exactly what exercise depends on the client, I think we can appreciate from this table here that someone's aerobic exercise might be different to someone else's, and that's okay. The main thing is that we are targeting these exercise categories. So, for example, aerobic exercise, a staple in any program, and can be applied in many ways. So you can see here that for client A, aerobic exercise might mean shadow boxing, because either A, he or she prefers that, or B, because mobility and lower limb strength mean walking for a long duration is not as feasible. So does that mean aerobic exercise is then ruled out for this client? No, it just simply means client A has acknowledged this and modified exercises that work for them. So just looking at these exercises, client A seems to be having more chair-based exercises. Client C seems to have more exercises that require more mobility. And then client B is somewhere in the middle. So I guess the main thing that I want you guys to get away from this table is that although someone's aerobic strength and so on are different, the categories are all still being achieved for each client. So although the foundation remains the same, the way you choose to dress that foundation will always be different. So, I mean, feel free to add some of these exercises into your exercise arsenal if they're safe and applicable. But of course, what I'd recommend is you see a local therapist for some further advice. So look, because I am a man of the people, I did add in 3 extra slides of just some staple exercises that may or may not be applicable to you. So let's just start with TheraBand exercises. So I find that if I ask people if they have a TheraBand, the general response is yes, but they just don't know how to use it to its full potential. So definitely a very underutilized piece of equipment and a great home piece of equipment that can definitely step up your exercise game, so to say. Especially at home. So I mean, here we have some basic upper and lower body strengthening exercises that can be done with the TheraBand. So we've got things like a chest press, bicep curl, knee extensions, hip abductions, and I mean, the list goes on and on. These are just a few examples. But the thing to take away with TheraBands is that they just offer some extra resistance, okay, to a particular exercise. But in saying that, it doesn't mean that these exercises can only be done with a TheraBand. So for example, the knee extension, the bottom left, that can be performed without a TheraBand, okay? That TheraBand just simply adds a bit more resistance to the exercise. See it as a progression to the exercise. And so just in case you don't have a TheraBand, but you'd like to purchase some, I was looking at the Kmart and Rebel Sport websites, and they do stock them. So I mean, just have a look at stores like that, and I'm sure you'll be able to find something. So same idea here, just some staple bodyweight exercises that can be done when equipment is a limiting factor. So especially during these times, and when we find ourselves exercising at home, and just a few ideas on some basic home exercises that you can do as well. So we've got things like a chest press, a great upper body movement, sit to stands, a great lower body movement, and also bridges on the bed, another great lower body exercise. But also make use of the things that you have at home, such as a stairs or a step. Other items such as a water bottle, putting on a backpack, and adding books into that backpack. So it adds a bit of extra weight / resistance, or whatever it may be to make your sit to stands or whatever exercise it is more challenging. I mean, even simple things like water bottle. So you guys can't see, but I have like one of those big gym water bottles that I got from Kmart. It was like $4 or $5, right? It's like a 2-liter water bottle from Kmart, and so it does really well in replicating a dumbbell. Okay, so like it's just it's a 1 or 2 kilo, including if you add in the water. So I mean, just simple things like that. Just get creative about things. Because I'm sure there's plenty of things around the home that you can use to supplement your exercises if necessary. But I mean, main thing is just keep moving and stay active. Okay. So once again, we have some basic balance exercises at the top. Okay. So we can see by reducing the base of support and having the feet together, we're challenging our balance. Okay. And we can make this more challenging with the head turns from side to side. So that's the top middle picture. But in saying that, also notice the chairs and the safety considerations, okay? Especially with the balance exercises. So if you're looking to add these into your program, please, please, please make sure it's done in a safe environment, and supervision is there as well, okay? Now, I got a few responses regarding foot drop, and I mean, this discussing foot drop can be a whole topic in itself, but I just want to briefly touch on a few points in regard to that, okay? So number one is identifying why that foot drop is occurring. Is it a muscle tone or is it a muscle weakness issue? Generally speaking, it's a combination of the both, of the both. And so generally speaking, once again, we want to focus on two things. Number one, strengthening the muscles that lift the foot up when we're walking. And number two, improve the mobility of that ankle joint and the tightness that may be causing that foot drop to occur, okay? So that's why I love this toe exercise here, the bottom left. So the reason I like that is because with this exercise, we're strengthening those muscles that lift the foot up. And so the muscles that are, the main muscle that's responsible for that is called the tibialis anterior. So if you just place your hand on your lower leg around the shin, okay, and then you lift the front part of your foot up, you'll feel that tibialis anterior activating. It runs through the whole shin, the shin here, okay? So that muscle does two things. It lifts the front part of the foot up, which is called dorsiflexion, okay? But it also inverts the foot, okay? And so, as I said, that's why I love that this towel exercise here, because it incorporates both of those movements. So just to clarify with that picture, what it doesn't show or illustrate is that the lady with the towel is trying to bring the towel closer to the other foot. And so how she does that is by dorsiflexing, lifting the front part of the foot up and inverting the foot, okay? And so in doing that, what she achieves is that she brings the towel closer to her other foot, okay? But as I said, if foot drop or any other concern like that is an issue for you, then what I'd recommend is you see a local therapist who can recommend more specific exercises and other assistive devices to help with these issues, such as foot dropping. It doesn't have to be foot dropping; it can be anything else as well. So just to summarize what we talked about, let's look to work towards staying active on most days with at least two exercise sessions per week, consisting of some aerobic, balance, strength, and mobility exercises. Because as this quote puts really well, the single thing that comes close to a magic bullet in terms of its strong and universal benefits is exercise. So I'll leave exercise there with that strong statement and really powerful statement, I think. So once again, we'll go to our next poll just to break it up a bit, and hopefully we can get 100% again.
Absolutely. Thanks, Eric. This question is, which of the following options are considered physical activity? And this time you can choose as, oh no, actually, sorry, it's only set up that you can choose one. Sorry, I should have made that you could choose as many as you like. But have a look at those answers. I've just read it properly. Is gardening a physical activity? Are household chores physical activity? What about exercise? What about all of the above? And I know there are a few people that are telling me they can't do the poll. That's okay. It's not a problem. It's a bit of fun, breaks up the session. But see if you can put your answer in there and we'll see what people say. There's some comments coming in as well. A couple minutes, couple of seconds more to vote. Anybody else want to vote on that one? And I'll close it off. A couple of people are telling me in the comments, that's great. And pretty much 97% are saying that all of the above are physical activity. But, and I'll get you to comment on this, Eric, because some people do wonder how beneficial things like household chores and gardening are in terms of physical activity and exercise.
Yep, for sure, for sure. I mean, let's break it back down. So physical activity is any bodily movement, okay? And so what the body loves, what the body really wants is movement, okay? And so I understand household chores or gardening, it can be seen as, very, very minor, but not to the body. The body loves movement. It loves that that breakup in things. So I mean, that's not to say that sit down on the couch and just enjoy Netflix, because I do. I know I do. But the idea is that the body loves movement. Okay, so that's why things like gardening, household chores, it just breaks up the day, and it just keeps you more active. Okay, active doesn't have to be a very intense exercise session. Okay, it can be as simple as doing a household chores or gardening in the back. Okay, anything that requires bodily movement is good. Okay, no matter how minor or how major it is. Okay, so hopefully that answers the question.
Eric, someone's asking, what's the best time of day to exercise?
I mean, for me, in my experience, a lot of people with MS generally like to exercise in the mornings, and that's simply because they feel more fresh and fatigue doesn't kick in as much. But in saying that, the main thing is to actually exercise. Okay, so I mean, there's other things to consider. Your fatigue, your schedule. If you have to look after the kids, or if you're at work, or any other commitments. So I guess what works for you. How can you fit it in? So I mean, there's not necessarily a best day to exercise or best time to exercise. Sorry, but generally speaking, I would recommend maybe in the mornings, just simply because clients generally with MS, they feel more fresh and they're more keen to exercise in the mornings compared to the afternoons, especially when fatigue kicks in.
For sure. And there'd be a caution there about not exercising too close to wanting to go to bed at night, because that can disturb your sleep too.
Yep, for
And
sure.
someone else is asking, how long would you expect the recovery from exercise to take? Are there any recommendations around that?
Yeah. So I mean, as a lot of people know, heat sensitivity is one of the key MS symptoms, and obviously as we exercise, we increase our core body temperature. But as in saying that as well, there are ways to minimize this through, you know, having loose clothing, fans, or being in a cool environment. But to answer that question, generally speaking, and it varies for everyone, anywhere between 30 minutes to 2 hours, okay, is generally when, you know, the effects of heat sensitivity to exercise generally calm down a bit. So
That's great. And someone else is asking about the heat intolerance, cooling neckties, cool vests, as well as you mentioned the cool drinks and the air conditioned environment. They can all be ways of maintaining exercise, can't they?
yeah, for sure. I mean, there's there's just a lot of great things out there, as you mentioned, Andrea, that can really assist clients in maintaining that cool body temperature while exercising. Okay, so I think it's a combination of all those things that you listed. You know, those cooling garments, loose clothing, cool environment, fans, a combination of all the above is generally recommended if heat sensitivity really is um, prominent for you in particular.
Thank you. And sorry, Eric, while we're on a roll, any different strategies for people who are over 65
Different strategies in what way?
for exercising? Would they do anything differently?
Um, no. In terms of exercising, no. I mean, the main thing is that you do what is possible for you. So I mean, yes, I mean it just depends on what you can do. I mean, the main thing is that you're staying active, you're staying on the move, and so of course it doesn't have to exclusively be for people over 65. Um, but the main thing is that you're doing what is possible for you, okay, and doing it in a safe manner as well. Uh, so yeah,
That's great. Thank you.
okay, great. So I will move on, and so, I mean we sort of touched on some of the barriers before, such as that heat sensitivity, um, but we talked about um, how much how much exercise we should be doing, what sort of exercises, and why exercise is important. But as I mentioned before, we also have to acknowledge that there are barriers to achieving this, um, but also understanding that there are ways we can leapfrog these barriers. So, of course, with MS, there are some added barriers, as we mentioned, such as heat sensitivity, um, muscle weakness, and so on. And so I won't really go into these, because what I'd recommend is you refer to the previous webinar for more tips in regards to those MS barriers, okay? But what I do want to discuss is some of the barriers we all face. And one that I found to be quite common with the clients we see is, number one, motivation, and number two, accountability. So I think it's important we touch on these two barriers, um, just because especially during these times, it's extremely relevant, especially with everyone exercising at home, and so that motivation or accountability that you'd maybe get by going to your local exercise clinic is now sort of gone. Not gone, but to a certain degree, it's diminished for some people maybe. So what I'm a big believer in is that when dealing with any neuro condition like MS, having a multidisciplinary approach is always best practice. So having having your OT, EP, neurologist, physio, doctor, and so on is key to managing one's condition more effectively. But within this team, and the same goes for any other team, right? There should always be a team captain. And so in this case, the team captain should be you, the client. You're in charge. You steer the ship and you pick the team. And I really do, I do believe that if you have this mindset, then you're more inclined to take on that responsibility and act in a way that suits the agenda the team has, which is to improve the health, well-being, and quality of life of you, the team captain. Okay. And so, as I said, by having this mindset or having this team captain approach, we're effectively A, being more accountable, and B, being more motivated to do better. But in saying that as well, it's easier said than done, right? So I'm not saying this is something you can simply switch, okay? But throughout my talk with you guys, I hope that I can plant a few seeds, okay, that over time lead to better health and well-being outcomes for you, okay? So just have a think of how you can be the team captain, okay? So I won't go over this too much, but basically when it comes to motivation, there's always that desire from within to do a certain deed. And that's what we call intrinsic motivation. And so extrinsic motivation is the opposite to this. So do I think one is better than the other? Not necessarily. I mean, it's fine to have a mix of both. So for example, you like to exercise because it makes you feel good, but also you like to exercise because you socialize with your friends. There's nothing wrong with that. But what I would say is, in the face of having all that extrinsic motivation taken away, especially if we're all exercising at home, finding that drive within is important. That's where that sort of internal motivation becomes more important. So it depends for everyone, right? But for me, it's because the reason I like to exercise is because I genuinely enjoy exercise. I can shut off all my troubles. I feel better after. But for me, I think it's because I see the value of my health, um, especially during these times. You really value health, and I know exercise is crucial to me staying healthy. So for me, exercise really is the number one investment you can make towards your health. And therefore, that's why I exercise. And I know for a lot of other people, that's why they are motivated to exercise. In saying that though, as well as motivation, another very easy and effective way to overcome those barriers to exercise, such as that lack of motivation or accountability, is to also set a goal. But we want to, when we're setting that goal, we want it to be a SMART goal. So let's go through this together and hopefully makes a bit more sense. So first of all, the reason setting a goal is great is because it allows us to stay on track and have a clear direction on how we can reach our goal. And so if we have a clear path forward, then we're more likely to persevere forward, right? So when setting a goal, as you can see, the SMART acronyms here, is that we want to be number one, specific. So there's no confusion as to what we want to achieve. Number two, measurable, so we can track and assess our progress in reaching this goal. Number three, we want to be realistic or attainable. Number four, we also want that goal to be relevant to what we want to achieve. And lastly, we want it to be time bound. So we want to put a time frame on when we think we will achieve that goal. So to put all of that into an example, we have Tim here who wants to get healthy. That's great. Perfect. Perfect for Tim. But what we've got to ask is, how are we going to achieve that? So to turn this goal that we have here into a SMART goal, it would look something like this. So Tim will ride an exercise bike at home for 20 minutes in the morning, 3 times a week for the next 2 months. in order to improve his health. So just by looking at both examples of a goal, so either Tim wants to get healthy or the SMART goal, just by reading that, which one are you more likely to follow? So hopefully we can all agree that by having a SMART goal in place, we're more likely to follow through with that goal, stay more motivated, stay more accountable, and as a result, achieve our goal and stay active, okay? So, I mean, maybe setting a SMART goal on the number of days you will exercise might be just what you need in order to get you going and motivate you to exercise at home. So to summarize this section, the barriers section, try take on that team captain role and use the team members around you to empower you to be confident in what you're doing. And that's what I hope to achieve as well, to empower you to be confident, to exercise, to be active, okay? But also be confident in the fact that you're the leader of your own health, okay? In saying that though, don't forget that, you know, you do have those other team members or other allied health professionals that are always there to support you, okay? They're there to advise you, to help set up that game plan, so to say, on how you can tackle and manage your MS in a more effective manner, okay? So use those services that are around you, okay, to its full potential, and I'm sure you'll get you'll be more effective in reaching or managing whatever you want to be managed, okay? So I believe this is our last poll. So we'll go to this now.
Thanks, Eric. Yes, here's a question for you. Which of the following options, from what Eric's been talking to us about setting SMART goals, which of the following options do you think best describes a SMART goal? Is it that is this a SMART goal that Tom wants to improve his activity levels? Or perhaps you think this one's a SMART goal. Tom wants to walk on most days for 20 minutes. Or maybe Tom will walk 20 minutes 5 times a week in the afternoon for 3 months. Or Tom has decided to go for regular walks every week. Which one of those do you think feels more like the SMART goal idea that Eric was talking to us about, where we know clearly what we need to do and how to go about it? If you want to vote on that poll, that would be great. And again, any questions that you want to pop in along the way too. We're drawing towards the end of the time that we've got together, and I know Eric's got some other information to share with us. So let's be prepared for what we've got in the time coming up. So a couple more people to vote on that, and we'll see which one people think is most closely a SMART goal. I'll close that off and I'll share the results. So 77% of the people online feel that and I'll say the smartest goal is Tom will walk 20 minutes 5 times a week in the afternoon for 3 months. And then we've got a smattering of the other goals as well.
Yep, cool. And I mean, yes, but the reason answer is C. So Tom will walk around his block for 20 minutes, 5 times a week in the afternoon for the next 3 months, is because the goal is specific, so we know what he wants to do. It's measurable, it's attainable and realistic, as well as time-bound for Tom, okay? And so that's why C is the best answer to this, okay?
Thanks, Eric.
So as Andrea said, we're heading towards the end, so just bear with me, guys. We are almost at the end, and actually, I think we'll get through the next few slides quite quickly now, I think. So I think we can all agree that during these unprecedented times, we've had to adapt to the situation, right? And so with adapting comes the thinking of how we can adapt our service or how we can adapt our situation to suit the current climate. So I guess what I'm getting at is to use the time you have wisely. Use it to unwind, reset, or do that thing that you said that you never had time to do, okay? So of course, there's plenty of cons to the current situation. I don't want to take anything away from that, but let's also consider the pros, okay? Uh, but more importantly, let's look after our health, okay? Because it's times like this that we really see the true value of our health, I think. So yeah. So feel free to have a look at some of these resources. They're great starting points if you're looking to get more information on all things exercise. I'll go into a bit more detail on each one. So here we just have so MS Research Australia, they just recently released a physical activity guide. It's a great read, very easy to download if you click on the link. So if you're looking to add in a few extra exercises maybe into your exercise arsenal, then check out the MS UK website here. It will just provide some further inspiration, so to say, for exercise that you can add. But remember, the main thing is that you add in some aerobic, strength, balance, mobility, and /or other exercises such as core work or group strength, for example. And so lastly, we have the Exercise Right website that we can, that also provides some added exercises as well as some tips and tricks when exercising, like the picture here on the left, outlining how you can make use of household items as some added resistance to your exercises. But as I said, just let's make it fun and enjoyable, okay? So just in case you're looking to get some further specific advice, or you think you could benefit from one of our services, get in touch with MS Connect and they'll be able to set you up with one of our telehealth services. So Exercise Physiology is one of those services, and if you feel you need a bit of guidance, maybe need a place to start with your exercise program, or just wanting some extra advice specific to your needs, then we'd be more than happy to have you on board. So, but as I said, the best point of contact to begin this whole process is by contacting MS Connect directly, okay? But also, as well as that, I'll make mention that you can find your local EP via the Find an Exercise Physiologist page on the S website, as well as speaking to your local GP or your organisation about seeking EP services, okay? So just to summarize what we discussed today, we talked about brain health and the pillars of brain health, with one of them being exercise, which we should aim to do on a consistent basis, okay? But as well as that, staying physically active on most days. We also touched on the main components of an exercise program, and because everyone's goals, concerns, clinical presentation are different, it's not so much about what's the best exercise, but instead the question should be, are you ticking off all those exercise categories? Which is all well and good, but of course there are barriers to achieving this, right? So we talked about ways we can maybe overcome those barriers. But of course, we also talked about the telehealth if you're looking to gain or talk to one of us about your specific circumstances, and MS Connect is the best starting point if you're looking to get more information as well. So the take/stay home message is simple. Exercise is non-negotiable. It's important we stay active, stay connected, stay in touch, but more importantly, stay healthy during these times, okay? So, I mean, that's a wrap. That wraps it up from my end. And I guess depending on time, I'll be happy to take questions, but I'm also, feel free to get in contact with me as well, and I'll be more than happy to answer questions that way as well. So thank you. Thanks for listening, everyone.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Eric. And if you want to flick through, I know you've got some references that are included in the handouts. And then to the next slide, we'll just sit at the questions slide. That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you, everyone, for your contribution during the program as well. There's lots of thank yous coming through. And someone made the comment that the May 50K walk that was run as a event through MS has been really motivating. So that's a great tip for other people as well. And someone made the comment that they really liked that analogy of being the team captain. That's super. Lots of thank you messages coming through. So that's awesome. That slipped past all. There were a few questions I was going to come back to. And one is, Eric, any suggestions for specific hip flexor exercises?
Any specific? So this is where it's quite
So would that be
difficult.
better as a telehealth consultation?
I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of. I don't know what the best is because I don't know the specific circumstances for the person
Yeah.
that's asking the question. So that's where I was talking about where it is quite difficult to answer those sort of questions. And I do want to give an answer. I do, but yeah, I feel it would be quite. It depends, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would encourage everyone to make use of the telehealth. I don't know if anyone's had a telehealth consultation during this particular period. I actually have, and I was really impressed with how well that works. So having that one-on-one consultation by phone or particularly by Zoom on the computer can be really valuable in getting some more individual advice. Sorry, there's a long one there, Holly. I might come back to that. Look, I think that's about it. Someone's asking if we have any idea when the gym will reopen in Lidcombe, and I think that's still a long way off.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to give you an update, but we just don't have an update. But obviously, there's a lot of things being taken into consideration, and a lot of processes and whatnot to make it safe. First of all, because that's the most important thing. But you know, once we do get an update, all of us, the team, the EP team here, will get in contact with all the clients personally. Okay, so
Absolutely.
just watch your space, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Eric, and thank you everyone for your time today. I will follow up if there's anything I feel wasn't answered, and if from the other side, if you have further questions or if you have felt that your question wasn't answered, please prompt me and I will make sure we get that question to Eric to answer. Really encouraged by the motivation aspects, Eric, that we all need to be coming up with our reason for exercising. And there are so many benefits for people with MS to make sure they're continuing to exercise. I often work with people around fatigue, and it feels like double Dutch, but exercise is the best way of managing fatigue.
For
So I
sure.
would be encouraging everyone to do as much as they can, and to find something that they enjoy doing. It's not all about punishment. It's about enjoying being physically active and keeping healthy. Thank you again. Stay online. A little survey will pop up after we finish the webinar, and we'd love your feedback. Any ideas of other topics or any feedback for this program, we're always happy to receive that. So thanks everyone, and thank you Eric again for being online today. Lots of thank you messages still coming through, so that's great. And we'll look forward to seeing you at another webinar in the future. Thanks everyone.